When you read Time each week, you know more. You understand.
Time flies, and you are
Only one source of news and information. What would you want it to be? If you say Time magazine, you're by no means alone.
If there was one magazine covering all the things you care about, wouldn't it belong in your home?
It would take you to major world events so you'd know the real reasons behind them and how they could affect you.
It would show you the wonders of science and the latest advances in medicine.
It would be completely down to earth, helping you understand what's coming next in the
The
economy.
magazine takes you beyond the news to help you make sense of it all. So read Time and understand.
throughout your world, throughout your land. Time puts it all right in your hand. Read Time and
So
understand.
you know what's going on in the nation, politics, interesting people, the latest movies, your health, and technology. And you get it with all the color and insight only Time can deliver, so you really understand what's going on.
That's for me. I'll take it.
Not yet. You get free home delivery.
Great. I'll call.
Not so fast. Wait to see this.
What?
The Time 35mm camera. It's free with your paid subscription.
You gotta be kidding.
No, we're not. The Time 35mm camera. It's free with your paid
Each
subscription.
week, Time magazine takes you
No, we're
beyond the
not.
news
The Time
to help you make
35mm
sense of it
camera.
all.
It's free with your
So read Time and understand.
Throughout your
If you read
world,
Time,
throughout your land.
you will
Time puts it
understand.
all right in your hand.
Now on the left side of the screen, you're going to see a video that Time magazine released of every single cover that they have made so far quickly in a row. On the right side, I'm going to show 52 examples of residue for how I remember the title being, and a lot of them are Photoshop contest entries which have to be accurate to be highlighted.
How'd you solve the door dilemma?
Homer Simpson was the real hero here. He jury-rigged the door close using this.
Hey, what is that? It's an inanimate carbon rod!
So this M is the dilemma. Till M, myself, 52 winners of a Photoshop contest where they had to accurately portray a Time magazine cover, as well as The Simpsons, remember the M being straight up and down like this. Remember how there were horns recently? Oh my gosh, look at this thing. I didn't know about that. Something struck me as odd when I first saw it besides the implications of the devil's horns, and I didn't put it together until I saw this, that the way it was before, they didn't have that option because of the different fonts. And that's like one of the things that kept me going here. I was like, oh man. So,
And I've just done this with my hands. I'll now walk over to my laptop. By doing so, I'm demonstrating to you that as a thought leader, I understand technology and that there will be slides. Because everybody knows that a presentation seems more legitimate than it actually is if there are slides.
that's just a funny TED Talk. That's not a real TED Talk. It's a spoof. But anyway, here's the logo change log, one of them anyway. And it seems like in 1972, that's when it officially became this upside down looking W, or two lambdas, like we're seeing a lot with A's that all of a sudden become a lambda. Lambda is this Greek symbol with the A without the middle part. It's been a trend that a lot of Mandela Effect people have been noticing. The official branding website also shows no record of the M that I remember. What is so odd is the fact that it says in 1972 the M got wider, but check this out. I went back to that video that Time magazine released of, I think it was 90 years of Time magazine covers in 120 seconds. And I just wanted to double confirm of when this M got wider. And something interesting is that it reflects much earlier. This is 1938, way earlier. And yeah, it changed again, but that's really interesting that it got wider in 1938, even though official record, supposedly, says it wasn't until 72. And without reaching too much, I mean, look at the middle of this. Looks just like the Large Hadron Collider from CERN. Very, very interesting. When I first discovered the Mandela Effect, the logos didn't really mean that much to me. Like, I wasn't discounting them, but it wasn't the strong suit of the changes that kept me interested. And I didn't really understand until like a couple months ago that, oh, well, yeah, of course, just like the rest, they're really interesting because it's not saying they've always been that way, opposed to what I'm sure a normal person would think off the bat, which is that maybe they changed it secretly or something. But the point of the trippiness of the situation that keeps everybody interested, or at least part of it, is the fact that it doesn't exist in any of the products or in the logo's history, and that's the real craziness. And that's something that branding departments find to be valuable, because the whole point of a branding department, which is a whole complicated thing on its own for a company, is to try to attract consumers. So, you know, they'll do differences and stuff, and then they can do tests and see like growths and declines. And I don't know at all anything about branding, but I do know that it's not like it's something that they would just like want to get away with because they want to go with something better. There's like a formula for it between, you know, the product and the consumers. So, and plus you can see websites that are like, here's a bunch of logo changes that you didn't notice changed, and these are not the ones that are being labeled as Mandela effects. It's just crazy that this Time magazine hasn't ever had this M that a lot of people remember, including myself. So who cares if this M just changed magically? Well, Time magazine is huge. It's one of the biggest publications ever, if not the biggest. I don't know if this is widely known, but I'm pretty sure that at these big news agencies, companies, there's not like, it's not like just a conglomerate of what's important objectively by a team of people around the table all uniting on what's the most important thing. I've heard a lot of times, I don't know where, that there is actually a like executive order, these stories will be covered today. And I mean, that's sketch, right? You know, it's like there's a definite spin on things. Like, I wonder why certain things are covered and certain things aren't. I mean, Henry Luce, the founder, knew what he was doing with this thing as far as steering public opinion and narrative. Time co-founder Henry Luce had started out in the 1920s with a clear and focused vision of who his audience was and how the magazine would serve them. Time was for the busy man who needed to digest the week's news in about an hour. This one's great. This guy got in trouble for sharing a fake Time magazine cover, and here they are side by side. I don't have the whole story, but I think that they're both fake, and I think one of them didn't know that one of them was fake. I don't know, but it's interesting to me because of the fact that obviously side by side they're completely different. Here's another Time magazine residue, followed by some more. Chicken head. Fake magazine cover. Fake magazine cover, Trump. Okay, so this is interesting. Kendrick Lamar's album called Damn. Some people think that it's a testament to the Trump Time magazine with the M as the horns. Down here somebody says it looks like the Time magazine. And it says, what's the implication of the cover illustration, which frames the word damn like the logo for Time magazine? How about the fact that the points of the M form devil's horns over Lamar's head just as they did for a certain president-elect named Person of the Year? Well, this M is the way that I remember, which is residue M, even though this isn't saying it's time, but it's if it's referencing time, it's referencing it the way that I remember it and not the way that it is now. Here's a little bit more residue.
If it's okay with you, I'd like to pace while telling you this story.
I next looked for the font of the title for Time magazine, because maybe that could shed some light on this. I don't know, people talking about it, because I thought maybe there'd be residue. An inverse happened. Usually it's hard to find a residue, but this time it was really hard to find the actual font that matched it. It was very unique, and further compelling for why I think that this actually is a Mandela Effect, so check it out. The most likely thing that I found was people saying that it was Times New Roman or a variation of it, even though it's pretty, proprietary is one thing, but the closest being Times New Roman. And to further that, here's two more people that remember it that way. So here's what the Times New Roman font looks like, and this is similar to what I remember. And I was really happy to find this because within the first 5 minutes of researching what this font is for the Time magazine title, the majority of them that I'm finding are how I remember it. This guy gave a pretty good answer that if I was just briefly looking at, just sort of like, oh, I wonder about this, and I would just be like, oh, okay, cool, and I'd move on. And according to this very small font board, this guy has plenty of credibility because he has, quote, 20 plus years tinkering with printed media for individuals and something that I blurred out, clients. He's basically saying that a custom typeface is created for the word time, like with every revamp of the magazine. But I think that that's not true.
I met a thought leader and I asked him, how did you become a thought leader? And you know what he said? He said, I don't know. Now that doesn't sound important, and it's not.
This website is called Fonts in Use, and it was one of the things I came across as far as breaking down what fonts possibly this new title to me could be. There isn't any Times New Roman on this website, but there is Pro Forma a bunch of times, which is very similar to Times New Roman. So I checked out Pro Forma, and the most popular font listed on a pretty official site for graphic designers breaking down fonts looks a lot similar to the title that I remember rather than the title now. But moving on from that Fonts in Use website, Franklin Gothic was listed, but this is definitely looking like article font. And I know it's not Futura because I know that font, so the last one from that site is Optima. Thought I had it for about a minute, but then I compared the M's, and it's still not this one. This M is even closer to the way that it is now, but it's just still not wide enough, and I just wasn't convinced yet. But it's on the shelf for possible M. Now I was kind of secretly hoping it would be duplicate ionic because that kind of sounds like, something Matrixy. But I mean, the closest thing about this is now the T. This is the closest T that we have, I think. I found this Weiss or Weiss font, and I think a related Google search, like at the bottom, related searches, and again, it's pretty close, but not exactly wide enough for what I'm looking for.
Let's look at a picture of the planet for no reason.
If I just walked in a room and this guy was talking about going through the fonts and thinking the font of Time magazine is different, I'd be like, this guy's a Looney Tune. But it's the context of it, and it's just so much easier to find evidence of the font for the Time logo being how I remember it, further propelling me into the rabbit hole of thinking, oh, this did change even though it's as big as Time. And also you have to keep in mind it's the nature of this entire Mandela Effect thing. It's where a lot of times we only have your memory, but I've got a lot of evidence that it was like this, yet there's no actual existing Time magazines with the way that I and these other people are remembering it, as well as The Simpsons. I mean, it takes them 7 or 8 or I don't know, a bunch of months to make an episode, and I'm pretty sure they're gonna, and then somebody could say, well, maybe they did it a little bit different so that they could avoid some copyright things, and I don't think so, and it's just interesting that there's only people talking about it, or only the act of a creation, i.e. these Photoshop contests, where they're basically being a cover band for the cover of Time, so it has to be accurate to win, makes me wonder about the parallel dimension thing. It shouldn't exist. The fact that the horns thing as well with this sketchy M, that I didn't even realize because the M has been covered for so long. Oh, that's the other thing. This M gets covered a lot of times too, by heads.
What happens if I put some words over it? How about a number? What if I pose a question? By doing this, I've now made you think that I know what I'm talking about.
I'm just trying to show you my process here. So basically I went to this font identifier website and, you know, one more failed attempt at trying to find it. It just decided, you know what, I'm not going to even touch that M, buddy. This stuff here on the bottom is, it just decided to subtract itself. So really getting down to business, I learned that Photoshop has a match font function, and with the actual full logo, the fonts that came up were things I had never seen and also didn't look at all right to me. So what I do is I isolated just the M, and this is when it came up with what looks like Trajan seems to be the trend. But I continued to search just to make sure somebody else said it somewhere. These tutorials on making a Time magazine cover from this year, and this one says Trajanus Brick, and this one here says Trajan Pro. Looking it up on Adobe Toolkit, this semi-build one looks pretty good to me, so I just type in the word Time just to make sure, and I think that there is a winner. This video is pretty funny in reference to Trajan.
Anybody else sick of all this Trajan? Everywhere I look nowadays, it's just Trajan, 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 Trajan. What is Trajan? Let me give you a hint. That's right, it's the movie font. Trajan is the movie font. Like indoor plumbing and toga parties, Trajan hails from Rome. Matter of fact, you can find almost 2,000-year-old inscriptions on Trajan's column, where they have totally off-the-leash keggers on Saturdays. In modern times, the typeface Trajan was meant to convey Roman epic movie. And the Roman part faded away, then the epic, it just means movie now. You may have spotted Trajan here, or here, or here, or here, or here. Not here, 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 here. You get the point. Some movies escape Trajan in the theater and get stuck with it on DVD. Russell Crowe has co-starred with Trajan 3 times now. Every single horror film made in the past 5 years uses Trajan. Here's a fun idea. Next time you go to the video store, go one last time for old time's sake. Try playing the Trajan drinking game. So, movie graphic designers, this is hard for me to say, but I think we need a break. I think it's time to see other fonts.
And I'm going to tell you an unremarkable story that's seemingly unrelated. And it's funny. And you'll know it's funny because I'm laughing. And you're laughing. And you'll ask yourself, what does this have to do with his talk? What is the point?
So Trajan has been used in a lot of horror movies, which is, that's fun. You notice he didn't say anything about it being used for the Time magazine font. Well, I did a little bit of research on the font first and discovered that it was created in 1989 by a woman named Carol Twombly for Adobe. Well, this type of font for Time has now, according to the breakdown of the logo, been used since 1972, so that's odd. Or even odder, not the animal, even more odd, 1938, that M for the first version of the logo just got randomly wider. And I know that the font for Time is definitely just proprietary, meaning it's its own, but still, it's just pretty strange. So she basically was trying to emulate the font that is on Trajan's column. The column consists of basically the complete battle of Trajan's Roman Empire defeating the Dacians, and the Dacians just basically weren't having the Rome way of life, and well, they got destroyed. And the inscription is just one small facet of it, but most of it is basically just the conquest that was Rome.
Sip of water.
Definitely need water now after I've researched so much about this Roman Empire and Trajan and stuff. And look, I understand that the most obvious implication, if there is implications in these Mandela effects, which is a reach in itself, but the most obvious one is probably the fact that media influences public narrative and opinion, and also therefore how we remember history. That's the most obvious quote-unquote lesson, I think, if there is even lessons in this, if this is even real. But I had to just talk about this other thing real quick because it's a really interesting connection based off of the font's name and what happened and how it affected future us. I don't know why Times New Roman is the most popular font, I guess, because, I mean, from what I read about Rome, I don't want to be anything like Rome. It seems like it sucked, to be honest with you. So Trajan basically, you know, the column was a big memento towards his conquering of Dacia and the Dacians. And the Dacians were basically kind of like the anti-establishment a little bit, and you know, he wiped them out. And Trajan's column is a spiraling engraved comic strip about the battles, and it's one of the surviving elements of Rome. I think it's one of the only ones after an earthquake. And Apollodormus was the creator of the column, and he also created other things for Trajan, such as the Portus, which was a hexagonal pool near the water in Rome. And it was very interesting, as I'm going to post a link, but this guy is basically saying that this hexagon connects all the way over to North America before they even quote-unquote knew it existed. It connects with Oak Island and Maryland, and also Temple of the Rock, and he just shows that these ley lines in this planetary grid system, which we hear about all the time, where they say open up your chakras and raise your frequency and connect with the chakras of the earth. Well, this was being arranged like back in 100 AD, and then moving forward to like 1500 AD, Pope Sixtus V is somebody else that I ended up looking into. And this dude embarrassed himself because look up papacy, basically. This was when there was a big conflict between Protestants and the Catholic Church. Protestants were protesting this papacy of basically the popes believing that they were God, and that what they said was, you know, that they were Jesus. And so he was trying to rewrite the Bible, and it apparently was this big thing of embarrassment because he just was out of his mind or something. But he basically, and by the way, he chose the name Sixtus, he basically was rearranging obelisks in Rome and erected like a bunch of other ones, and it almost seems like he was, you know, affecting these planetary grid things. That, and keep in mind, the ley lines, the planetary grid, the sacred geometry thing of the Earth is something that scientists don't even discount. They say there are weird energy anomalies in these areas. So, looking into the real. Well, I don't know about real, but at least the opinions that I saw, and they were hard to find, but the difference of how the popes were back then and what they were affiliated with seems like it's, you know, to me a pretty evident thing about my hesitations towards this planetary grid thing and blindly opening myself up to it. And that's not to say that it's something I want to completely avoid. You know, it very well could be user-based, based off of intention. You know, maybe just because you open yourself up to it doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, it's going to affect you negatively or going to be giving into like this hive mind thing. But then again, it very well could be, and it's just something worth looking into, like questioning everything that we're told, especially when these people were doing this stuff so many years ago before they even knew that North America existed, and they're perfectly aligning with Maryland and Oak Island. And there's so much more to know. This is just about a day of research. But man, oh man, I was just flipping out about all these connections, and all from the Times New Roman, the Times Magazine change. And who knows, maybe it didn't even change, but I mean, I think it did. I really do think it did, at least for me. And that's the thing, there's no consistency. It seems like some things change for some people and some don't. But the 52 Photoshop winner contests and The Simpsons, I mean, I think that's some pretty good residue. So I basically am just excited to be able to look into this stuff. I'm excited to learn and also not take things at face value, and I just keep on trying to sort out the wolves, you know, and we just got to keep the faith, and I think we're in a really interesting time here. And thank you so much for watching this video. If you've made it this far, I've got a bunch more that are going to come out, and the next one's going to be about music, probably the next couple. I've got a bunch of music stuff that I've been noticing, and you know, peace.